Heidelberger, sorry about that, author, publisher of the current affairs blog, the Dakota Free Press, teacher, and political activist.
Thank you, Marie. Okay, I got two hands, I got two electronics, and I talk with my hands all the time. There's going to be a problem that arises here, so bear with me. Yeah, close enough. Thank you, Marie, for the introduction. I am Cory Heidelberger. I write something called Dakota Free Press, and I do a lot of political stuff, which I know we've heard some people say this isn't about politics, this is about humanity, and I agree. But I'm going to say a few words about humanity and about dehumanization, and I'm going to say a few words about politics and political action, and about how the two, especially on this issue, really are inseparable, and call on us to both respect humanity and human dignity, and to do so by engaging in political activity. Let's see if I can do that without plowing a lot of ground that's already been plowed very well by Wendy and by Marie and by Sam, and I'm sure that others are going to bring up today. For me, this issue is pretty simple. People, fellow human beings from wherever, are living in terror. They want to get out of that terror. They are parents like me, and they want their child, like my child, to be safe, to grow up. They run from all they know to come to a different country, to come of all countries, our country, to America.
It's already great. That's why they want to be here.
Yeah. They know our country has long been great, perhaps the greatest nation in the world, and they want to come here, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are families in peril, there are children in peril, and they run to our country for safety. And when they get here, men with guns seize their children and take them away from their parents. It's that simple. The argument ends there. That conduct being done on behalf of our government, by our government, on our behalf, is wrong. It is that simple. I agree deeply with the sentiment that Marie expressed at the top, that it is that simple, that if you say we're separating families and no one likes that, you'd better stop there. There's a large period there, and it's done. There is no but that follows that basic statement of humanity. But where do those buts come from? Sorry, that's the most vulgar thing I'll say today. Strike that from the record. You could see what's going on in my head, though. Oh, my gosh. But seriously, where do those buts come from? How can people look at that basic violation of human rights, the abuse, the torture, the child abuse that we are doing to children just like our own? How does that happen? How can anyone look at that and say, well, yeah, but... I'll tell you how that happens. Through dehumanization.
Yeah.
You get it. Cool. I don't have to expand that greatly. I'll simply say, the only way that anyone could ever justify ripping a child away from its parents is by treating those parents and those children as if they were not fellow humans. It is through an atrocious failure of empathy, of understanding the humanity of the person across from us, of understanding that every human deserves the same consideration and respect that we would expect to be afforded to us or to our children. It is only through dehumanization that such atrocities can happen in our society. I emphasize that word because I want to bring my remarks to the local level about what's happening and what we can do about it. Because for some people still, this idea of, oh, it's at the southern border, that's far away, that's abstract, it doesn't feel real to them. That itself is a failure of empathy. 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles, news reports, whatever, should not make us immune to being able to understand those are parents or children, they're in pain, we must stop that pain. But that dehumanization in our democracy, unfortunately, starts with us. It starts here in our community, and I know we've got visitors from Britain and Sisseton, and thank you folks for coming from far and wide to be here today. But here in Aberdeen, we've had for the last 2 years now an ugly series of rallies where people gather to say, send them home, keep the immigrants out. They're not of us, they're our enemies, they're not humans, I hate to even recite it because then I participate in that dehumanization myself. But there are a number of ongoing rallies that happen in this community whose sole purpose is to dehumanize the other. Their sole purpose is to whip up fear and hatred and loathing of others in a selfish attempt to keep everything we have to ourselves and not share the American dream with those others who would risk life and limb to come here for the safety and security and human rights that we enjoy here as Americans. That dehumanization must stop, and we must speak up against that dehumanization in our midst. So about that speaking up against dehumanization, I understand the guidelines that have been very wisely set for our event here today. We are not here to campaign. Sorry. We are not here to advocate for specific candidates or anything like that. And that is the usual vision that people have of politics. Oh, that means you're putting up a sign and saying vote for so-and-so. True. But there's more to politics than that. I will say this very act of standing in public and exercising our First Amendment rights and holding up signs and raising our hands and waving to persuade the people passing us by, that too is politics. It is the American way. That's the good politics. That's what politics is supposed to be. Politics isn't just, negative campaign ads and fancy videos at the end of the campaign to surprise us. Politics is our taking charge of our destiny, speaking up for what we want, and enacting that will. A lot of people cringe at politics because they say they don't want to be part of politics as usual. And I can understand that, especially when politics as usual leads us to the atrocious outcomes like our government's abuse of human rights at the southern border. Yeah. But instead of cringing and withdrawing from politics as usual, we must recognize that changing politics as usual requires that we all get involved in politics. Politics as usual counts on citizens tuning out and dropping out, leaving a handful of wealthy special interests in power who will make decisions in no one's interest but their own. We need to elect leaders, and I think Sam said something like this as well on behalf of his dad, and I appreciate those words. We need to elect leaders who will speak to our conscience, not shock our conscience. We need to elect leaders who reflect our values, not renounce them. We need to elect leaders who will call out and criticize and condemn the anti-immigrant rallies in our midst, not attend and applaud them. And you, and you, and you, and you, and the rest of yous all, and I, need to be in the parks and in the streets and on the phones and in the newspaper, constantly reminding our leaders and our neighbors of our conscience and our values. We're wrapping up. I'll get there. We'll all get there. But democracy is work. America is work. And forgive me if I sound like an old-time Republican, but when I say America, I say that with some of the greatest sacredness I can muster. July 4th is coming up, and I know these horrible things that we've gathered here today or to protest are happening and should make us somewhat ashamed of our great country. But we should feel shame because our country is great. America is a great institution that we must work and fight for. But America, that great, wonderful ball of noble humanitarian values and inclusiveness, is not this cool machine that the Founding Fathers wound up and just let go all on its own. It doesn't work that way. We have to step up. Throughout history, great people, great Americans have always had to step forward to wind America up again and keep it running. America tore itself apart. Abe Lincoln had to put it back together. America collapsed into a depression. Franklin Delano Roosevelt had to redesign it, rebuild it, get it going, and get it through the greatest war great as in terrible, awesome, horrible war the world has ever known to keep America going. We almost fell into a recession, and Barack Obama had to step forward and do an enormous amount of work and go gray in the process. I know the feeling. And do an enormous amount of work to save America from that recession and work to inspire us, to remind us of what makes America so great. Believe it or not, you all are Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Barack Obama. You all, I am too, we all are Americans to whom falls this enormous responsibility to keep America great, to keep America working. And when America falls down, to rebuild it, put it back up, and make it honestly great again. That is our duty as Americans, to fight that dehumanization and to fight instead for the American dream that says every human being is welcome. That says that every human being around the world got trouble? Afraid? Not happy? Look at our prosperity. Look at our security. Look at all the blessings of liberty we enjoy in this country. They're so great, we'll share them with you. Because we've got enough to go around. Greatest part of America's greatness. Not just that we are great. That's a redundant sentence, but I'll say it again. Our greatness is not just that we are great, but that we are willing to share our greatness with anyone who can make it. All humans deserve that greatness. All humans deserve a share, and America is about sharing that greatness. That's what we're fighting here for today, folks. Remember that. Thank you very much for continuing that fight.